there is, because when you cope with something like this, there is a very thin line of difference between that scenario and when you talk about it in general parlance कि ठीक है अभी मेरे साथ ये हो रहा है, I would deal with this a certain way, but does that scar you for later on?
It scars many people, I think. That's why psychology therapy is such a booming business, is because it does scar people for a long time. I do think, though, the way to prevent it, not for others, this is not a prescription. What helped me was knowledge of these patterns, right? Knowledge is power, and in sort of reading about certain patterns that I had noticed in myself, right? Something as small as repetition compulsion, which is this need to repeat a certain scenario you know is negative for yourself, but you will constantly put yourself in it again and again. And I found myself doing this in certain scenarios where I knew it was negative for me. I knew it was bad for me, but मैं फिर से दोहरा रहा था. I was like, क्यों? I know it's wrong. And Gabor Mate is a sort of therapist, a very renowned therapist, and I heard him on a podcast, read a book where he talked about repetition compulsion. So he gave this phenomena a term, and I was able to label what I was experiencing, which is very helpful. And repetition compulsion was essentially, you put yourself back in negative scenarios in an attempt to want to this time approach it correctly. So you will see many women that have been in abusive relationships find themselves constantly in abusive relationships. And you're like, man, we have so many of those friends where you look at the partner they are having and you're like, this is not good for you. Even they're aware of it, but they put themselves again and again in a similar relationship that's not good for them. And one of the reasons Gabor Mate enlists for that is they put themselves back because they're trying to this time do it correctly. This time they're going to fix everything. This time there won't be abuse. And so it is an attempt to sort of clean the slate by putting yourself back in the same situation. And so it's a compulsion to repeat, hence repetition and compulsion.
And this is very interesting because I've seen this. I mean, I can't recall in an experience or a situation in my life, but I'm sure I've seen this in around me, in my friends, or maybe in my family as well, where I've seen that there is repetition compulsion. Now that you label it, now that I come to
exactly
think of it, there are, I've seen situations or experiences that, okay, this guy has been with this girl, didn't work out, again with this girl, didn't work out, again with this girl, didn't work out. And now that I come to think of it, why is there an urge to be in a situation like that? Correct. It's because to do course correction. But
it's to show कि मैं सही कर सकता था पहली बार में.
But how would you know?
How would you know is just what I told you. That is one way where I labeled a phenomena that's being experienced, and therefore you are able to categorize it. So मेरे में I'm opening up here, but for me the repetition compulsion was father figures. So the lack of a father figure growing up compelled me to find, like I used to find father figure in professors, in in even sort of mentors like that in my head. So if I read a book by a prolific author, I would like give them a father figure status in my head. Now it proved beneficial also. It used to drive me to do better, right? If you admire a professor and you seek their validation, then you will perform better. And I used to do that quite often, and sometimes to a degree where that relationship would take a toll on me. In my own head मैं ऐसा father figure बना देता था उस regular इंसान को. And honestly I was listening, I remember Gabor Mate's podcast when I was in Scotland, और मैंने एक 5-6 दिन की सोलो ट्रैक करी थी वेस्ट हाईलैंड वे, 200 किलोमीटर का है कम से कम. एंड मिड वे I hear this term repetition compulsion. They start talking about it, and in that moment it just hit me. I have been repeating these father figure mentor-mentee relationships with any elder male that comes in a search to fix the original issue, which was that lack of a father figure growing up, right? Lack of a positive father figure. Just being aware of that made me realize okay, this is a thing, a pattern I'm stuck in that I'm oblivious to. मुझे पता ही नहीं था ये pattern है. But अब इस pattern का एक नाम है, repetition compulsion. इस pattern का एक source है, trying to fix the original cause. And from that day on, I was able to slowly but surely distance myself from that pattern. Just by the awareness of that such a pattern exists.
This concept is, I mean, I don't know, this is very interesting to me,
Yeah.
and you can tell me to stop whenever
No,
you
sure,
want.
please go on.
But do you think this concept is flawed? Because to me, if you're talking about repetitive compulsion, you do a certain task and say you've gotten it wrong. The thesis is you will get it wrong for the first time, and hence repetition, right? So once you've gotten it wrong, you try and do it again.
Correct.
The compulsion is to get it right, do it again. That's the compulsion part.
Yeah.
To do it again.
To do it again.
And to make sure you get it right this time. But the idea is that there is no way or there is no metric to find out that you will get it right this time.
Correct.
So isn't this an obvious thing that you would do it again? Because if you
No, so you wouldn't do a thing that is, so where the paradox of repetition comes. So you're stating a natural thing कि भाई अगर मेरा टेस्ट है, टेस्ट में गंदे मार्क आए, मैं most people would try to study and improve that to get it right. Correct. But getting a test right is almost a positive act. Re-entering in negative scenarios time after time in a sort of a set pattern which you know doesn't work out, that's where repetition compulsion comes in.
But isn't every case different is what I'm trying to
Every
get
case will be different, and not everybody falls for repetition compulsion, right?
Okay.
So there are different ways problems manifest in, and there are different sort of psychological labels that can be applied, and I'm not a big fan of labels, but I just find that repetition compulsion is one where it makes logically no sense that you would re-enter a scenario that you know is negative for you, has time and time again proven to lead to a negative consequence, fixing which has no positive consequence. It's not like getting a father figure relationship right.
No,
or
my question here and my sort of conundrum here is that how would you know this is wrong again before entering into it?
Yeah, fine. I mean, you can't be certain about anything with 100% guarantee, but if 5 out of 5 times something has gone poorly for you,
notice patterns.
Hence the pattern. Repetition compulsion is not 1 off or 2 times. It's when a woman is constantly re-entering or a man is constantly re-entering the same type of relationship archetype again and again and again with the same provable consequences of abuse. And you're like, this doesn't work out for you, bro. ठीक है, तू बार-बार that I will fix her attitude से इस relationship में घुस रहा है और वो तुझे तोड़ रही है, तू निकल रहा है. तो तूने 6-7 बार कर लिया. There is clearly no upside for you. And what is the best case scenario? That you fix her? That is not a very... The upside there is negligible. Like, instead of wanting to fix somebody because of whatever trauma or however you're sort of conceiving it, just enter a relationship where nobody needs to be fixed and you can build something beautiful. But people don't see that upside because there's a compulsion that even they're oblivious to. Honestly, most people are oblivious to their compulsions. By definition, it's a compulsion there, right? Like these small desires that we have. So for example, me picking up my phone and, scrolling Instagram to seek validation or whatever, that's a compulsion. I only realized I did it after I did it.
Yeah.
It wasn't a calculated, अब मैं पढ़ाई करके टेस्ट में अच्छे स्कोर लाऊंगा और फिर से देने जाऊंगा. A compulsion stems from some place of oblivion. It's from the subconscious. Preparing for a test to improve it is a conscious act. Opening my phone, checking Instagram comment, like, it's subconscious or unconscious. And so same with the relationship types you enter. No person in repetition, like repeatedly doing compulsive behavior is calculating ki I will find a woman that requires fixing and enter a negative relationship. They just happen to find themselves in these scenarios time and time again.